Stephen Colbert thought he had the formula down cold. Bring on a conservative, sharpen the wit, toss in a few jabs, watch the audience erupt, and let the guests try, and fail, to keep up. It had worked for years. He wasn't just a late-night host. He was the progressive conscience in a blazer, sanctified by applause. And Pam Bondi? She was supposed to be another name on that list. She wasn't. It started with the handshake, firm, focused, unblinking. When he opened with, "Thanks for stepping into what your people like to call the lion's den," she didn't laugh, she didn't cringe, she didn't even blink. "I go anywhere to speak truth," she said with composure that didn't ask for permission. A pause in the audience, subtle but real. Colbert leaned forward, not to engage, but to corner. "You defended a president impeached twice. You stood in front of microphones claiming the election was stolen. How does someone who swore to uphold the law justify all that?" The audience roared with approval. Colbert smiled, wide, confident. The opening punch had landed, or so he thought. Bondi tilted her head slightly. "I swore to uphold the Constitution, not cable news headlines," she replied. "And any prosecutor who sees inconsistencies in process has a duty to question them. That's not political. That's responsible." The crowd shifted, a few claps, a few surprised murmurs. Colbert blinked, barely noticeable. But the rhythm had changed. "Come on," he said, playing to the crowd again. 60 cases, 0 fraud. Courts all across the country tossed them out. "If you'd let me finish," she replied, her voice controlled and unhurried. "Many were dismissed without reviewing evidence, on procedural grounds. But if we're keeping score, how many years did you push the Russian collusion story?" That hit harder than anyone expected. The audience dropped into silence for half a second, the kind that late-night producers dread. Not because it's hostile, but because it means people are thinking. Colbert chuckled, recovering. "The Mueller report led to indictments, remember that? And not one for collusion. But we're not here to relitigate old headlines, right?" she said, raising an eyebrow. "Or are we?" The smirk on Colbert's face flickered, and now Bondi leaned in. "You wanted a takedown. I get it. It plays well on social media. But I came here to talk about what's happening at the border, about fentanyl killing thousands, about real people who can't afford groceries. That's what matters to me." "We'll get to your talking points," Colbert replied, voice sharper now. "But first, how does someone like you end up defending conspiracy theories on national TV?" She didn't flinch. "The same way someone like you once spent years entertaining a theory that got quietly dropped when it stopped being useful." "But that's not why I'm here." She sat straighter. "You invited me. You implied I've broken an oath. You're trying to label me before I say a word. I get it. But ask yourself, is that journalism or just entertainment dressed up as outrage?" The audience didn't cheer. They didn't boo. They listened. Colbert's eyes darted to his notes. Something had shifted, and he knew it. The interview wasn't playing by his usual rules. The pacing, the control, it wasn't his anymore. Pam Bondi had walked in expecting combat. She came armed. The jokes kept coming, but the laughs started dying. And in their place, something far more dangerous took root. Respect. Stephen Colbert wasn't used to playing defense. Normally, by this point in the interview, his guests were either deflecting with forced smiles or trying to pivot out of the hole he'd dug for them. Instead, Bondi sat there, unwavering, dissecting every question like it was evidence in a courtroom. And the audience noticed. "So let's be clear," Colbert said, trying to regain momentum. "You've been making the rounds on conservative media, accusing the Biden administration of intentionally creating chaos at the southern border. Are you really saying there's a plan to flood the country with criminals?" Bondi raised an eyebrow. "No, I'm saying I've been there. I've spoken to Border Patrol agents who are overwhelmed, exhausted, and operating under policies that make their jobs impossible. That's not a conspiracy. That's firsthand testimony." Colbert let out a theatrical sigh, glancing at the crowd for sympathy. "And your solution is build the wall and ignore compassion?" "That's a straw man argument, Stephen," she said coolly. "Nobody's advocating cruelty. What we want is a legal, secure, and humane process. What we have now benefits no one. Not Americans, not migrants, and certainly not those being trafficked by cartels. The audience clapped. Not everyone, but enough to make Colbert sit up straighter. He tried another angle. You talk about law and ethics, but let's talk about that $25,000 donation you received from Trump's foundation, right around the time you chose not to pursue fraud charges against Trump University. There it was, the knockout punch. Or so he thought. Bondi's jaw didn't tighten. Her posture didn't shift. She looked him square in the eye. I was wondering how long it would take for you to go there, she said, voice calm but firm. Let me clarify something for your viewers, since your research team apparently missed it. She held up one finger. One, that donation was made to a political committee, not to me personally. Legal, disclosed, and reported under the law. A second finger. Two, the decision not to pursue the Trump University case was made by career prosecutors long before any donation, and based on the fact that New York was already handling it. She leaned in. Now, while we're talking about ethics, have you done a segment yet on the millions of foreign dollars flowing into the Biden family's accounts? Or is selective outrage part of the brand? The crowd murmured. Colbert's face stiffened. This isn't about Biden, he said quickly, almost reflexively. No, it's about consistency, Bondi shot back. You brought me here to paint me as compromised, unethical, hypocritical, but you never apply the same scrutiny to those you agree with politically. She reached into her folder and pulled out a stack of printed documents. You want to talk about donations and influence? Here's a list of foreign contributors to the Clinton Foundation during Hillary's time as Secretary of State. Let's talk about those connections. On air, right now. The room turned. This wasn't the usual rhythm. Laugh, jab, applause, reset. This was different. The energy in the audience shifted from entertainment to something more unsettling for the host, doubt. Colbert didn't respond immediately. He adjusted his seat, reached for a new card, skipped it. We'll need to verify those documents before. They're from your own network's reporting, Stephen, she said, cutting him off. Unless you're saying CBS can't be trusted. Scattered laughs, not at her, with her. This wasn't a guest losing control. This was a guest taking it. And Colbert, the late-night titan, the cultural authority, sat across from her with less certainty in his voice than ever before. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The knockout didn't come with volume, it came with clarity. Stephen Colbert glanced at the clock. It was subtle, the kind of glance meant to look casual, as if he were simply keeping track of show pacing. But Pam Bondi noticed. So did the audience. He was looking for an exit. Okay, he said, voice tight. You've made your point about double standards. But let's be honest, the rhetoric from Trump and many who support him has been divisive. Wouldn't you agree that tone matters? Bondi didn't hesitate. Tone always matters. So does honesty. She didn't pause to let the line breathe. She pushed forward. But if you're going to talk about division, let's talk about when this administration called half the country a threat to democracy. Let's talk about labeling political dissent as extremism. That's not unity. That's branding disagreement as danger. The audience stilled again. Heads turned. Some nodded. Colbert opened his mouth, closed it, then pivoted. Sure, there are heated words on both sides, but Bondi interrupted, not rudely, precisely. Americans are tired of lectures from people who don't live their lives, who don't face rising crime, who aren't watching their grocery bills double, who don't know what it means to wait months for medicine or to lose a child to fentanyl. Her voice was steady, low, and unmistakably real. They're not extremists. They're exhausted. That landed like a blow to the chest, not a punch. A truth. Colbert shifted again, smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Well, Pam Bondi, he said, clearly trying to wrap up, you certainly came prepared. I respect your audience enough to give them my best, she replied, warm but firm. That's something we should all agree on, no matter the party. A pause, long enough to feel. The crowd clapped, then clapped louder, not all of them, but not out of obligation either. Colbert looked out across the studio. The rhythm of the night was broken. This wasn't the interview they expected. It wasn't a roast. It was a reversal. As the segment ended and the camera panned away, there was no laughter, just silence, followed by applause that wasn't sure whether it was celebrating a guest or saluting a victory. Because deep down, they all knew what had just happened. If you found this breakdown compelling, hit the like button and subscribe for more interviews and confrontations they don't want you to see. We're just getting started, and the next one's even bigger.